I'm glad Donald Trump survived yet another attempt on his life, but it's not
absolutely.
It's not the first time, of course. He has also given incendiary comments blaming Haitian immigrants for eating cats and dogs. I could go on about talking about babies getting killed after their delivery, and saying that his opponents were all for that procedure. Racist comments that some said maybe weren't intended, but came across as that, calling. The only reason I'm mentioning any of this is, doesn't extreme rhetoric work both ways, and that Donald Trump himself should be careful with this?
Fox News host Neil Cavuto, in an interview with a Republican member of Congress, reminding his viewers of what Donald Trump has been saying on the campaign trail and on the debate stage last week, as threats continue to disrupt the city of Springfield, Ohio, after Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance's lies about Haitian migrants there. 2 more elementary schools were evacuated yesterday. Elementary schools, because of unspecified threats and information received by local police. That now brings the total to 6 city schools targeted in the past week. It was the 3rd school day now interrupted by threats in Springfield since the former president and his running mate spread those lies about Haitian immigrants eating pets and wildlife. The state's Republican governor, Mike DeWine, announced state troopers will be providing extra security for the foreseeable future at the district's 18 school buildings. Let's bring in Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist, associate editor of the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson. He is on the ground in Springfield, Ohio this morning. So, Gene, you took a reporting trip there to Springfield to see what the impact has been over these last couple of weeks since Donald Trump and others picked up on this 3rd, 4th, 5th-hand internet meme that the person who posted the picture originally that now says had no information about it, didn't mean to start this, and everything that's come from it. What are you seeing there in Springfield?
Well, you just given the reports, there are these threats are an everyday occurrence now. The first thing in the morning yesterday, 9 o'clock, there's a bomb threat or some kind of threat at City Hall, and a scream like 8 police cars and officers, and they check it out, and nothing happened. It happens, and they go away. But City Hall is not able to function in this environment. The schools are not able to function in this environment. 2 local colleges have canceled classes because of threats. Hospitals have had to be evacuated because of these threats, these unfounded threats that are directly prompted by the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the Republican Party, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance, who is one of the senators from the state of Ohio, is effectively disrupting the lives, and some people feel threatening the lives of his own constituents. It is absolutely appalling and amazing, and I've never seen anything quite like this.
So, Gene, school being canceled in Springfield, Ohio, that obviously means one or both parents, but certainly one parent, is going to stay home with an elementary school child who can't go to school because of all of this. Do you get any sense, while you're there, have you gotten any sense from people at the level of angst or outrage or whatever they're feeling about what is happening to their family because of the schools being shut down in their city?
Yeah, I've gotten a sense. Number one, I've talked to Haitian newcomers. I've talked to longtime Springfield residents. The one thing that everyone agrees on is that this is unacceptable. This situation right now is unacceptable and has to end. Everybody needs to calm down. Everyone needs to reject these stupid, I won't even call them rumors. They're just lies about cats and dogs and geese, and get back to what Springfield was trying to do all along, which is it's a city that's sort of rebounding, and after deindustrialization, it's it's really coming back. There are some big new employers around town. There's more jobs. There's more economic vitality. Downtown, there are some projects going on that are bringing life back to downtown. That's what Springfield is trying to do. At the same time, it is coping with a very large wave of immigration, of Haitian migrants primarily who have temporary protective status. Many of them, some of them are longer-term residents of the United States who've come to Springfield for opportunity. And so that's something that the city is having to deal with and to grapple with.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to get the bigger picture, Gene, since you're there on scene, because often several things can be true at the same time. Depending on what you watch or read, you might hear that Springfield is overrun with illegal migrants that are causing lots of problems for the system of the city of Springfield, and it is overrun. That large wave that you were talking about of migrants who are under temporary protective status, if you could address the problems that they are causing for Springfield, and also is it fair to do this type of math? The words of Trump and Vance on the national stage have caused this town to basically shut down at times and fear violence, or is it more muddled than that?
Well, that is certainly true, what you just said, that the words of Trump and Vance have caused this town to largely shut down in fear of violence. And that, again, is unacceptable to everybody I've talked to here. So Springfield faces what I think everyone would agree are challenges. It's a town of 58,000 or so people that has seen over the past decade an influx of at least 15,000. Some people say 20,000 Haitian migrants. As I said, they're not all recent migrants from Haiti, but most of them are. They are not illegal. They are not in any way illegally here. They have temporary protected status. They have a right to be here. And this is the pattern of immigration in America. Immigrants arrive at a certain place and a certain infrastructure gets set up, and so others come to the United States. They know they have a cousin or a brother or a friend, a neighbor who lives in Springfield and knows there's jobs and opportunity there. And so people sort of cluster. I'll tell you one thing, though, that I did see yesterday, Mika, that's so encouraging. And so there's a very good Haitian Creole restaurant that opened recently here in Springfield, and it is thronged with people. It is thronged with not just Haitian immigrants, but longtime Springfield residents who are going out of their way to patronize this restaurant and to show that that this is not about some sort of antipathy or hatred or othering of Haitian migrants. What it is about is adjustment. And it has required some adjustment on the part of this community and will require more adjustment in the months and years to come.